Hey friends, Mike Meiers here with the Songwriting for Guitar podcast, and you're going to be listening to Chapter 3 of my book, The Songwriting Guitarist, Transformation in Just 15 Minutes a Day. Chapter 3, The Three Elements. My one rule. There's one big rule I want to note before I dive in. Your time is valuable, and I want to make sure that we spend it wisely. Please avoid saying the phrase, "I already know that." If resistance is our biggest enemy, then its favorite saying would be that one. You know of something, but you probably haven't applied it, and haven't applied it with the mind of a songwriting guitarist. Knowing and implementing are always going to be two different things. When I hear people say that they already know that, I ask, okay, great. Have you applied it? Usually it turns out they haven't. They haven't practiced it or put it in a song. That's the big thing that I want you to keep in mind. If the phrase, "I already know this," comes to your mind, ask yourself, but have I used it consistently? Most likely no, and that's why you're here. So that's okay, because once we recognize that, we're able to start and continue implementing the most important elements of being a songwriting guitarist. Listening. First, I want you to be able to play in multiple ways. The three elements are going to allow you to do that. It has a complete and different feel each time, and I want you to listen to some of these clips before we proceed. Also, before we jump in, if you're like me, I love listening to my audiobooks at a faster speed. But for this section, especially since we're listening to musical clips, I want you to make sure that it's down to normal. Okay, all of those clips were C, G, A minor, and F. Even though all of those clips were in the same chord progression of C, G, A minor, and F, they all felt very different in vibe and feel. Could you tell they were the same progression? Go back and listen if not. The amazing power of these upcoming three elements is the ability to offer different feelings to the listener. It's all in the feeling the audio incites, because with songwriting, we're trying to capture a feeling. The vibe a song can offer will always trump virtuoso technical abilities. That's the core point I'm trying to get across to my students. Element 1, voicings. What is a voicing? A voicing is a chord played in a different way. It's all about the placement of the notes in the structure. If you play an open chord on guitar, you can find that chord again in a different voice in many different places on the guitar. Say you want to play E major in a different voicing. You could bar at the 7th fret and play an A form. It's still E major, but the notes are stacked differently. This is something I always think about pretty early on when it comes to songwriting, even before lyrics and melody. It's something that will help your song sound less dated, make your co-writer say yes to an idea, help increase the uniqueness of a song, and help the singer stand out exactly how they need to, which brings them back to the right again. Everybody here has the potential to write amazing songs, but most people don't get there because the melodies are the same. Their melodies are the same because they have a go-to voicing and the same chord progression consisting of the same pattern, style over and over and over again. Doing this doesn't guarantee the guitarist is complementing what the vocalist is actually doing on the track. This makes it so the song can't have a distinct vibe. It actually feels pretty ugh, and many times it sounds dated. I know this may sound a little harsh for some, but it is true. There are core reasons songwriters fail, and once you understand this, you can move your songs in the right direction. Here's the thing. You have to match the right voicing with the right genre. If you don't match the two, it's not going to give off the feeling you're aiming for. Let's use a folk Americana song, for example. If you're using chords commonly used in pop music, you can't expect to get an Americana song or an Americana feel out of it, and vice versa. If you're trying to write a pop song, you shouldn't be using Americana chords. If you find the right voice, it will most definitely work in your favor, and you'll have the ability to unlock better melodies. Think of everybody across the internet who's reading this right now or listening to this. How much music have we collectively listened to in our life? It's a ton. Think of how much we're inundated with music on a daily basis. We have all these melodies that are in our head, but they have to be unlocked somehow. And I find that when we get the right voicing, it's going to unlock another door in our head that has a better melody. It won't end up being like our usual melody, but something different and more interesting. It's so powerful that it's going to seem a little mystical at first. You'll go, where did that come from? What you just unlocked is something your brain needed to hear and pulled from that voicing. Bonus, suddenly your songs will also sound less dated. What makes this such a superpower as a songwriting guitarist is that it makes songwriters, lyricists, and singers all want to work with us because we're complementing their vocal styling instead of fighting against it, giving confidence to and supporting their abilities. We're appealing to the side of the songwriter who is looking to write more interesting melodies and songs. For example, if you have someone with a light, airy vocal, and you're using a harsh bar chord, it's not going to complement the vocalist. It's just going to work against the vocalist. That's one major thing in songwriting we do not want to do. From my perspective, since I write for film and TV a lot, it's always about the vibe, and the vibe of the show has to be good. I found that voicings will make or break a vibe. All right, get your guitar out because we're going to do a little practice together. You're going to learn a C major chord voicing. We're not going to do it in a way that you probably know, which is maybe an open chord. Instead, we're going to do something that's a little bit lighter and more modern. Now, if you don't read a lot of tablature, don't worry, no sweat. The sixth string is the thickest string up top, and the first string is the thinnest. The frets you're going to play are the third fret of your fifth string and the fifth fret of your second string. In other words, you're not going to play your sixth, fourth, third, or first string at all. You're going to take your first finger and place it on the fifth string, third fret. Then you're going to take your third finger and place it on the second string, fifth fret. Now you're going to pluck those two strings. What you're doing is getting a root in third. It's still C major, but it sounds lighter. We're not plucking a lot of strings because if you look at this tab below, we're eliminating the sixth string, the fourth string, the third string, and the first. We only want to hear two strings. That third, too, is the harmony, and it sounds really cool, super light and airy. Get to know your fretboard so you can find these root and thirds easily. Remember, you can access a video tutorial of this and other concepts that I talk about in this book by just going to songwritingbook.com. Element 2, strumming. Now that you have a better grasp and direction to go with voicing, let's get into strumming. This is something people tend to overlook and continue to use a default strumming pattern that they've become comfortable with. I've been teaching for over a decade, and I see this over and over again. Whichever decade you grew up in, or whatever music was the most influential to you, that's your strumming pattern. Whether you choose it or you didn't choose it, it's your default pattern that you fall back on. Now, this may not be what you want to hear, but if you want an arsenal of varied strum patterns, want to have changes, want to have drops, want to have builds, want to take the listener on a journey, you need to start playing with a metronome. There are two metronomes that I absolutely love, Pro Metronome and Metro Timer. I believe both are available on the Apple App Store and Google Play. A metronome is going to help reel in your timing because everybody is rhythmically inconsistent. The metronome does a great job of pulling us in so we can start to build some consistency. For me, being able to play with a metronome is confidence. I can tell when I put on a metronome whether somebody feels confident, they can lock into it, or not. I use the metronome in my own songwriting sessions. When we sit down to write, we're going to want the song locked in at a particular pacing. The way that the vocalist is delivering the melody is going to sound the best at a certain BPM. As we're working on the song, we have to have a metronome on as I'm playing along because I don't want to come off as sloppy to my co-writer. Coming off as not put together or sloppy can make you look unprofessional, and you don't want that. Nobody wants that. Also, playing sloppily won't hit the listener like it should. You want to establish a baseline that the singer is comfortable to play around with. I want to show you an example of a song I co-wrote and produced for Heather Evans, who's an amazing sync artist. This audio clip is actually just the isolated guitar and isn't the full song. I want you to listen to the verse. All you'll hear are the acoustic guitar stems. Let's listen to a verse, pre-chorus, and a chorus. Let's listen to that exact same section again, but this time let's add Heather's vocals.
I've been walking this road alone. The darkness tries to swallow me whole. I find my way when I look inside. It sparks a fire that helps me fight. And I'll keep going, 'cause I'm a beacon, I'm a flame in the night. I'm a fire burning bright. Try as it might, just won't feel my light. I'll carry this hope to the front of the light. I'm a flame in the night. I'm a flame in the night.
In this verse, it's pretty low-key, and if you listen to Heather's vocal, it's very soft. She's not belting. The song really starts to rise up here. It's meant to be anthemic. This song has been used in a ton of shows where it's behind some powerful scenes, and some scenes are building up to a moment. So when I was playing this, I realized I had to capture this feel, whether the vocal was there or not. Leading into that small section, I have this light strum that leads into a down pattern that's kind of almost like building it to the chorus. Let's continue listening this time, specifically to the song build. We actually use multiple guitars on this song because when you feel confident with a metronome, eventually you're going to start to mess around with ideas and maybe even track your own guitar. I couldn't record multiple guitars without a metronome. I can be sloppy, messy, all over the place. The bottom line is, I couldn't have gotten this very pattern without the metronome. Your song should have varied strum patterns. It shouldn't be the same the whole way through. It should be mixed up. You can have it ebb and flow as you're going through it, but you can't be confident if you don't feel confident with the count. Another important thing to note is sometimes having pauses or breaks is going to feel like the right thing to do. Quality strumming is going to do this. It's going to highlight dynamics in your song. What I mean by dynamics is your song shouldn't look like this flat line or wall of noise. It should look like a roller coaster going up and down. It should have builds and drops because that's what makes it interesting. That's where you can use the same chord progression or same pattern, but you're taking the listener on a journey. It also guides the listener through the sections of your song. Your listener should be able to spot where the verse and the chorus section is. If your song doesn't do that, it makes it difficult to listen to. We've probably all experienced this feeling where we've heard someone's song and we can't tell where the chorus is because it just sounds the same. There was no transition. There was nothing getting us to the next section. Remember, great production can't help a poorly structured, limited dynamic song. But great production highlights a well-crafted, highly dynamic song. Element 3, techniques. And before I get into techniques, have you said I already know that a few times with some of the things that I've mentioned? Again, remember, you may be aware of some of these things, but again, my challenge to you, are you actively working on them and consciously adding them into your songs? Or are you now aware and you go, oh, I need to start doing this, Mike. You're right. Now we're getting into the third and final element, techniques. These are essentially the icing on the cake. Techniques give the genre its flair: percussive muting, hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides, accented picking. We don't have to throw all of these techniques into one song, but these are great examples of flourishes that essentially make a simple chord progression majorly contribute to the overall vibe of the song. Keep in mind, feel will always be way more important than the technical side. Now, I have an example I want you to listen to. This song is more country pop, but the opening line has some hammer-ons, some pull-offs, and a few slides. That sort of twanginess is what makes country pop stand out. If I just played those notes without the different techniques used, it would be boring as hell. It would not be engaging, and I wouldn't be able to repeat as much. However, since I added those elements to the song, I'm able to repeat the section over and over again. I have this huge section, and it's going to be followed by a very low-key verse. This is going to be the verse where you'll hear the acoustic do a few more percussive things. I'm going to have a slide guitar and do some slides. Then eventually that low-key verse builds up to another big chorus. So let's take another listen. Hopefully you could tell a dramatic difference from the intro because now the listener is hooked due to the variation in the song. And the volume we've just brought down dynamically is going to build back up. Now, when I get into the elements and I do any workshop or any talk that's revolving around this, I notice a lot of like eyes kind of light up and like light bulbs go off because I think on surface level, a lot of these things we kind of know. And that's what I've realized when I say avoid being like, I already know that. We kind of know about voicings. We kind of think about strumming patterns. We kind of think about techniques. But the big thing is we're just not intentional. Every single person when I was teaching guitar that would come in, it was always a different artist, different genre, different style, different decade that they wanted to learn. And to me, I needed a system that was very quick for me to look for those elements. And to me, that's how I broke it down, voicing, strumming, techniques. And what I discovered was I really started to appreciate the nuances of every single style, every single song, every aspect of it that made it a little bit different. And what was refreshing was when I went into commercial songwriting, I started to make that jump, I could carry that process with me. So I really challenge you, and like I would challenge anyone in a workshop, to really, really spend time with this. Because if you do, believe me, you are going to notice a dramatic difference. It's those that always stay at the surface level, never diving deeper into this, that they're playing. There's not a big difference. There's not a change. But those that truly embrace this idea and truly accept, like, cool, these are the three things that I really need to focus on. I need to have specific answers. I need to hone in with the genres that I'm doing. I have to understand them. I have to listen more. They do incredibly well. And as I said, too, in the strumming section, when you start to have, a lot of these nuances and you can vary your patterns again and again, you don't always need to, change to crazy chords. What I find interesting, people are like, I need to learn crazy chords. And I'm like, okay, why? Well, my songs are they're, it's not as interesting or people aren't as engaged. And it's like, cool, they're detached. I don't think crazy chords are going to be the answer. Or we change so many things that we think are wrong with the song. A lot of the times the dynamics are the things we should be looking for, but we end up changing melodies, and it goes into a slew of unnecessary changes, unnecessary things. We're really at the heart of it. It's these three things we need to be thinking about. So again, my challenge to you is to focus. And what we're going to do in the next chapter is we're going to get into, okay, how do you start to implement this consistently? Because everybody's at a different stage in their songwriting career where they don't have the ability to devote hours upon hours. So how can we start actively doing this a little bit every day?